when I started as a dietitian, the typical session for them is just like asking them a bunch of questions about their life. It's like a doctor's visit. And then we had to create this nutritional diagnosis, right? Like inadequate protein intake and all these different things. And we're supposed to just provide an education to the person. I was just educating somebody on the importance of protein and here is some ideas. And that's what people walked away with one session with me. And sometimes it was a meal plan or some motivational interviewing, right? Like trying to people to get to the goals and the things that they need to do with themselves. And I helped a good amount of people, but I realized there were so many things that were missing. So I transitioned into, again, the model. I think like that was at that time what it's called nutritional counseling. So coaching people integrally and holistically. So for me, a coaching session can start with asking the question you asked me today. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me how you grew up. And sometimes when I need to connect it with nutrition, I ask them, what was like eating like when you were 12?
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Anne, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jaye Anne, your host, and I'm here today with a very special guest, Ayesta. And we're going to learn a lot about exercise and nutrition, but we're also going to learn about that transition, that shift from how do we get from a hyper-masculine place, if we're out of balance, to a more feminine place and have it be everything in balance. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. Andre, say hi. I forgot to say that.
Yeah,
Say hi.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. In our pre-recording call, I know we talked a little bit about how I could kind of fit into this conversation. And I didn't know at the time, but I feel like I have so much to share about my story, my experience, and my also like knowledge that I was super ecstatic and excited to talk to you and your audience here today.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We don't interview a ton of men. And so consider yourself to
Yeah,
be
I'm
among
lucky.
very
I'm
lucky. Yes.
honored. Yeah.
um, so what I want to do is I want to tell everybody kind of give you them a sense of like who you are and what you do. And then we'll talk about all kinds of fun stuff today. I'm really excited for this
Yeah,
conversation.
for sure.
So for everyone listening, Ayesta is a registered dietitian, sports nutritionist, and founder of Planos Nutrition, where he helps men over 30 and busy professionals lose fat, improve energy, and build sustainable habits without restrictive diets or gimmicks. With 12 years of experience, actually more than 12 years, and features in outlets like Forbes, CNN, and Men's Health, Andre combines science-based strategies with real-world coaching to help people create results they can actually maintain. And for those who are listening who've heard you somewhere else, we're going to have a little bit different of a conversation today than you usually have, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we could definitely expand that bio to also say that, I have been broken and try to kind of like, fix myself in the process and finding myself going from a diehard Catholic growing up to just like the spiritual butterfly in a way, to just explore different parts of life as it is and connecting with myself in ways that I never thought that I could. And in that process, really self-transform and continue to do so. So I guess that's a part of that that is not in the bio that I'm usually openly talk about in podcasts, which is another reason why I was pretty pumped to share with you guys today.
I love this. I love this. So for everybody listening, we always like to talk about astrology, and you do know something about astrology. So what is your sun sign and how do you relate to it?
I'm a Virgo. I'm a diehard Virgo. Virgos are very analytical. Virgos are the kind of person that put a GPS and they try to beat it. They're the kind of people who they need to know the exact numbers or something. They're very methodical, and they're very calculating, and I'm the same way. And typically Virgos tend to be very perfectionists in a lot of the things that they do, and that can be a double-edged sword because of the fact that we get a lot of things done and we thrive a lot. And typically a lot of Virgos are like leaders, and they succeed a lot in areas in their lives, but at the same time that becomes their the things that weigh them down, because they want to be perfect, and they create so much anxiety and so much pressure on themselves to perform, that it's a thing that haunts us, at least the way that I relate to that sun sign for myself.
So well said. So well said. I think a lot of Virgos out there are going to be like, yes, you got my number.
Yep, exactly.
Tell us about how you grew up and sort of how that feeds into who you are today and how you became the person you become.
Well, I'm an immigrant. I live now in Tampa, Florida, but I wasn't here always. I grew up in South America, in Venezuela, in a small. I grew up in. I was born in Caracas, in the main capital of the country, and but most of my life I lived by the water. I lived in a small town called Puerto La Cruz, and life was. I grew up in a household of four. We had I had a dad, mom, and a dad, a brother, couple of dogs, and I grew up initially in a very, very wealthy neighborhood. We had everything. I remember growing up with, having like a house with like this massive, beautiful backyard, and my dad drove a Mercedes. My mom did the same. We had like motorcycles and boats and all this like fancy things. But when I was 8, we lost everything. My dad kind of got into a kind of bad business dealings, or kind of got laid off from whatever he was working, and we moved to a farm, which was a crazy transition. And we moved to a complete different city, sold everything, and kind of saw my parents go from like having a lot to having almost nothing. And we were nearly homeless at one point, if it wasn't because we had a family member who took us in her apartment for a year and a half, until my mom was able to find a job that we really struggle. And all that period of time, I think, it really kind of pushed me, like pushed the Virgo out of me to try to be perfect and be the best, and study hard. So I was the second of my class. We're not gonna talk about that, but I was again like trying to be the best that I could have been. In fact, I wanted to be a doctor, because in my
So
mind, doctors were like this, big name, and like they were respected and stuff like that. And that to me equal to success. And success was being wealthy. And I remember being a kid and promising myself that I would never put my family through something like this.
mm,
And I was grateful to my parents because they did everything that they could to get us out of that, and eventually they did. But it was a tough time. And I think I learned a lot throughout the process. And I think none of those things really came out until I was like later in my 20s. And this is why I have like spent probably the past like 8 years in therapies sessions, and going through different therapists and different things, alternative and not, to try to figure out exactly what happened that messed me up in certain ways, and kind of made me who I am today. But the long story short of this is the fact that at some point I was going to school. I never ended up going to med school because I didn't get into. Um, and I found nutrition as a way to potentially transition into a medical career in the school that I was going to. And I never looked back. I actually remember going to my first therapy session at 18 years old, and asking the therapist, like, what am I supposed to do with my life, when my entire life I thought I was supposed to be this person in this career? And she said, well, not all doctors wear coats. And that
mm,
kind of resonated with me. And I realized that for me, I had a really good calling to prevent disease rather than treat it. And I thought that was so cool. And I was an athlete my whole life. And I thought that was another avenue that I could have taken. And I was just a natural born athlete. I was just good at all sports. And I was good. I was not great. I was good at every sport. So that's another thing. I never got to be, get a scholarship for sports or anything like that because I was just an average good athlete. So at some point, I moved here. I had a very dramatic actually experience where there's a point in my life when I started drinking a lot. This is like in my teenage years. In Venezuela, you can be 18 and drink, but definitely we drink a lot earlier than that. So I think I burned few cards, a few stages way, like I think since I was 13,
Mm.
growing up there. And I think when I was around 17 or so or 18, I got into a car accident while being super drunk and me driving.
Wow.
And I ran away and cops got me. And like, he was like this crazy situation that I'm not proud of. And I decided to turn things around and apply for scholarships. And I did everything behind my parents' backs. And I think this happened on June of 2020, 2008, no, 2009. I was already going to college actually at that time. And within 3 months, I was here. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how everything aligned for this to be the case. I think, everything in the universe was like, you need to do this. And I did. And that's how I moved here, ended up in the United States. And I have been here ever since. And,
Wow.
that's sort of like the story that got to where I am today. So,
That's incredible. Tell us about your journey that you've talked about. So you sort of alluded to this journey where you were doing too much and you were trying too hard and you were probably pretty successful at it, but something shifted and you had to make a change. So tell me about that moment.
yeah, I think I've gone through different stages of my life where anxiety just takes over. I feel like I have this I had this intense pressure to perform, to do all the right things and check all the right boxes and have money and have grades and have the perfect relationship. And I've gone through like moments of my life where like everything just got really difficult for me. And I think what changed for me, first of all, I met my wife that started to kind of help me understand that there was areas that I just needed to let go of. I think I had a big issue letting go. I still do. It's
Mm.
actually one of the hardest things for me to just release, that I'm learning to this day. So I think around 10 years ago is when I started this transitional journey for me, where I realized I need to change something within me because otherwise I'm just simply going to lose it at one point. And I did. So this is where I started to talk about my past,
Mm.
to explore different um experiences. I was the type of guy that started saying yes to all kinds of experiences, no matter how crazy they sounded, from drugs to like spiritual experiences, to travel and going places, to jumping off of like play. I mean, like, you name it. And for me, I was never afraid of that because I felt like I needed to find something. And that's kind of where it kind of took me on this, I guess, like soul searching in a way that feel like I have been perpetually on, because I feel like this is just something that you just don't turn off. And it's allowed me to discover and uncover so many different parts of myself that at the same time has allowed me to become a better coach to other people.
That's wonderful. I want to hear because you told me that I want to hear about your 7-hour astrology reading. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
So part of this crazy stuff is when somebody offers me the opportunity to book a session with an astrologist in Mexico City. Apparently, this is a guy who's done birth chart readings to like some big famous people. And to get a booking with him, you had to wait a year, just so you know. Well, you probably understand now why, because like he's spending like an entire day per client. So imagine. Um, but this is like this guy that lives in Mexico City, and he sits with you and he goes through details. But for most people, it takes 4 hours. My wife, it took her 4 hours. For me, it took 7. And and the birth chart reading, which I have a recording of, and I feel like I haven't gone back to it because it's like going through see like Star Wars like the entire like trilogy. But I one of the big things that I learned from it is, or that I went through in those 7 hours that I sit down with him, is understanding exactly the different like peaks and valleys of my life in alignment with the planets, and how it was so clear, like the toughest moments of my life where certain alignments met. And it was crazy to me to see, like, this is a, like, if he would sit with me and tell me like something happened here when you were 8, like I can see all of this. And I was like, yes, that's when my parents lost everything, and like all these different things happened. And something happened here when you were like 12 or 13. Yeah, that's when my dad left. And it started to make so much sense. And this is when I started to believe so much in all this. When I realized that a lot of the things that happen in my life are just a part of like this cycle of life that we're living. And how it's all kind of connected within this, like, universe. And that just blew my mind. And it started to make me understand like so many different things that it just simply cannot be explained. And this is where I started to get a lot into quantum, and all the stuff and birth charts, and understanding like meditation and spiritual things and psychedelic trips and all that stuff like this, and just open it up. One of my best friends, this is a really great story, but she was in fact, she probably needs to be in this podcast. She founded a company called Untitled, which basically works, and they create spiritual journeys for people. But she's been my best friend since we were younger. In fact, we dated when we were in like third grade for like a week. But she's one of those women who graduated in fancy school. She got hired by CNN Atlanta. Then she work for like Lyft in San Francisco. Bread chick, incredibly successful. They moved her to work with WeWork, like this like co-working spaces and stuff like that, traveling, the world like as a high level executive. And at some point she went to this guru, like this shaman in Mexico, that completely like shifted her entire life. And she transitioned into this like spiritual journey, and she founded this company where she does now that. But she was actually the person that introduced me to this world, and introduced me to this astrologist, and this person that did my birth chart reading, and my current therapist, and everyone. And I looked up so much to her because she helped me to understand the power of manifestation, the power of the mind, the power of the self, and this infinite world of possibilities. So that's how I just started to just open myself up to so many different things in my life. And this is why I think I told you when we had our that pre-interview call that it's expanded everything for me as a coach, right? Because I'm the type of person that will jump in a coaching session with you now, and I'll say like, you know what, let's take a deep breath and let's just do a meditative practice. And I don't think many dietitians will do that with many other of their clients, because I now believe in the impact and the power of the mind and the spirit. So.
Hey friends, it's Julie. I'm just popping in here real quick to tell you about a very special invitation we have for you. If you have been feeling deeply called to learn more about your feminine identity, or to see what feminine power really is, or you're just loving the podcast, then Kaylee and I would love to invite you to join our community, Feminine Alchemist. Inside, we host live monthly women's circles, challenges, and Wheel of the Year celebrations. They are seriously so much fun. We have monthly workshops where we bring in experts to teach on anything from menstruation to mythology. You'll also get access to our library of courses about astrology, intuition techniques, sacred embodiment, and cyclical living. And most importantly, you'll be able to connect with women who are like-hearted and walking the same path as you. So if this sounds exciting to you, join today by clicking the link in the show notes or going to femininealchemist.com. That's alchemist spelled MYST. Okay, back to the episode.
What did your coaching sessions look like before you made this shift in your life, and what do they look like now?
Oh my God. When I started when I started as a dietitian, the typical session for them is just like asking them a bunch of questions about their life. It's like a doctor's visit. Like, tell me about like your eating habits. Okay, we're gonna do a 24-hour recall. Like, tell me everything you eat on a 24-hour basis. And then we had to kind of create this like we had to create this nutritional diagnosis, right? Like inadequate protein intake and all these different things. And we're supposed to just provide an education to the person. I was just educating somebody on the importance of protein, and here is some ideas, and that's what people walked away with one session with me. And sometimes it was a meal plan and or some motivational interviewing, right? Like trying to people to get to the goals and the things that they need to do with themselves. And I help a good amount of people, but I realized there were so many things that were missing. So I transitioned into again the model. I feel like that was at that time what it's called counseling, nutritional counseling, and I transitioned into just this word coaching, right? So coaching people integrally and holistically. So for me, a coaching session can start with asking the question you asked me today. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me
Mm.
how you grew up. And sometimes when I need to connect it with nutrition, I ask them, what was like eating like when you were 12? Right. And this is where a lot of people have started a lot of their issues with food,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes like you'll have like 12-year-old kids who are overweight and have obsessive parents that don't want them to be overweight. That happens a lot in Latin cultures, but here too, where they put them on diets when they're 12. Imagine the trauma, like, that's like when you're being put on a diet when you're 12 years old, when you're not even fully developed. So I ask him about their past. I ask him about the relationship that they have with themselves, with their bodies. Um, everything that I coach people on is split into what we call 5Fs. So we do what we call a 5F assessment. And everything in life is literally split into those five things. One of them is just your finances. So it's everything that brings livelihood to you. I mean, or not livelihood, but it's like what puts food on the table, right? Whether it's you're going to school or like it's gonna happen if you're younger, or like your job or your business. Then we have fitness, which is physical, nutritional, and mental fitness, right? And how is that looking right now in your life? Then we have family and friendships. It's your connections, right? Your community, the people that you surround yourself with. Then we have faith, which is usually your spirituality. What do you believe in? And what is like that higher deity or God or religious or not that you believe in? And fun, which is what brings joy into your life. So for me, when I'm coaching people, I'm trying to understand like the level of fullness of each one of those buckets. And I try to focus on the one that needs the most. And the reason why I focus sometimes in non-nutrition related stuff is because somebody that is like spiritually poor, or somebody that is struggling with connection with their families and friends, they have a hard time trying to change something within their health because of the fact that they just feel isolated, or they feel that they're just lost, and they don't have a good place to be able to be guided by. So that's where sometimes I tell people like we may not talk about nutrition one bit today. And I realize this is exactly where a lot of times happens. And what's craziest, like yesterday I had a call with one of my clients that I worked with last year, and she wanted just a session just to catch up. And she went through a divorce, but because she wanted to. And I don't and I told her this is like I'm not responsible for that, but I saw how much she was suffering in her life. And I just simply pointed certain things along with her therapist as well that got her to understand that she needed to make a change in her life. That was not nutrition related, but it all started with that because I started to help her really fix a lot of the things with her performance. She rides horses, and I was like, I want you to feel good. So it started to increase her confidence, and she started to notice things that she never noticed before. And that's powerful. And this is why like health is such a complicated thing, because it's not just this is why I hate about like the typical nutritional realm of things, which is like, oh, just eat this, or like put this on your plate, or just eat vegetables, because it's so much more than that. And I think why I feel like I am really good at what I do is because of the fact that I can see everything that is around it, the context by which a plate is placed upon, which is so
Ooh.
important too. So that's what my sessions look like right now. They typically start with information about that. I do ask questions about like what their nutrition looks like and what they eat, so the typical conventional stuff. And they typically end with, what's your one thing?
Mm.
I always ask my clients to tell me, what is one thing that you feel like out of like the 3 to 5 things that we know we need to fix, that you want to focus on, that you want to do. And my first sessions always start with a request, which is I get every one of my clients to get a journal, because I feel like the power of writing your thoughts and writing things and getting them from here to there, it's so powerful. So my client, in fact, like we had them and we ran out of them, but every client that I signed up at one point, we would send them a journal instead of having them buy it, so that they could start the act of writing some of this stuff. And I would give them prompts to start to really reflect on many of these different things that they were working through, because I feel like that's where the biggest breakthroughs come, not from a transformation bodily wise. It comes from a mental transformation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you're not happy with your body now, just changing your body isn't going to make you happy with your body. I've seen
No.
it with so many people. They lost all this weight, they look great, but they're still finding the flaws because they haven't done the inner stuff.
Yeah, well, they're the easiest way to determine this, and people listening in, most likely you're going to learn this, which is when you hear a man or a woman talking about the fact that they feel so fat right now, which is that's exactly the words that they use. And when I ask him, well, go back to when you were 20. Like, do you wish you could look like what you look when you were 20? Like when you were at that age, it's like I would die to be that way. I was like, okay, so hold on for a second. I want you to go now to your 20-year-old self and ask and literally try to sit in that person for a moment. Do you feel like you were comfortable in that body? And a lot of times people say sometimes yes, but most times it's like, no, I wanted to be skinnier. I wanted to be leaner. And that's like a never ending pursuit that we have, where people are so focused on the wrong thing, because they feel that happiness is going to be found in this, like, the pot of gold that they'll find, or like the end of the rainbow. It's, I need to chase it. But then the reality is like you never get to that place. Why? Because, well, you're not chasing the right things. You're never satisfied with it. And I tell people, in the process of transforming like the outer carcass of yourself, you have to love the outer carcass and whatever it looks like at any stage, knowing that you have the power to change it. But you had to start to understand that you need to accept yourself first before anything changes. One of the biggest takeaways that I got from my 7-hour birth chart is it was the word acceptance, right? Accepting the fact that things just are. And, trying to change or to really mold certain things to try to avoid an outcome or to try to push against something, it's the surefire way to ensure that that one thing you dread happening happens. So for me, now I try to get people to just practice radical acceptance and understand that whatever happens, happens, but you do have the power to change your situation because it's a choice in many cases.
Absolutely. There's like so many things that you just said that I'm like, we need to scream that from the top of the mountains. Because I've seen all of those things time and time again. Were you happy with who you were when you were 20? No, then why do you want to look that way? Like, you didn't like it then, but you don't like now. And it's not about the weight. It's not about the size. It's just like, why are we trying to change these things? And can we accept them first? You can't change anything unless you accept where it is. That's just baseline. So great. So great. I
Yeah,
love this. Um, okay. There are some things on your Instagram that I have questions about.
sure. Shoot away.
I think people are going to love this question because I've never seen anyone else talk about it. What is cortisol face?
Cortisol phase. Yeah, I so cortisol is a hormone. A hormone is a messenger. So people like, so we can kind of do a little bit of hormone one-on-one, and a messenger sends a message from different parts of the body, right? And different messengers have different roles, right? So cortisol is what we like to call our stress hormone, or one of our stress hormones, and it is involved in what it's called the fight or flight response. um, our cortisol is released by this little glands that are sitting on top of our kidneys called the adrenals. And the adrenals are part of a very complex system called HPA axis. It stands for hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And think of it as like this chain that connects from it's like literally quite literally a chain that connects from the top of your adrenals, which are two, all the way up to your pituitary gland, which is sitting right kind of like behind your nose and in between your eyes, and then into your hypothalamus, which is a part of your brain, right? So these entire system senses this, again, like fight or flight responses. Is what allows you to increase your heart rate up or like decrease your heart rate down. It modulates a lot of different things. So when we have stressors, which are part of life, stress comes in different forms and colors, as I like to always, joke around with my clients. We can have emotional stress, we can have physical stress, we can have metabolic stress, all kinds of different things. And I usually use this example. When if for some reason you walk out of your house and there's like a tiger sitting right in front of the house, you would freak out and you would just either run or close the door or something, right? Or if you see a snake, you run away or whatever happens. You see a cockroach, whatever, like, right? It's like a stress response. So what happens in that moment, you have a very huge like cortisol influx that what it does, it increases what is called like your sympathetic system, which is essentially this like, let's increase your heart rate, let's get you ready to fight or flight, right? So you're either going to fight the tiger, kill the cockroach, or doing something, or you're going to flight, which is you're going to be taking off, right? My wife with a cockroach will flight. Me, I would fight, right? I would just like kill the damn thing. So there's differences between those two things, right? But ultimately what it does is your body prepares you physically. It prepares you physically for you to exert something, because historically, from the evolutionary standpoint, humans were designed to, again, like face threats, right? We still do, but we're not facing the same threats that we faced like 1,000 years ago, right? We're not having to fight tigers or predators, right? That we used to, but your body internally doesn't know what year it is. So what happens, those are acute stressors, and again, it prepares you for that. So it changes all of your physiology to prepare you for that. Now, what happens when you have a constant source of stress that, imagine, is a tiger constantly scaring you, or like a cockroach, like, literally like walking around every like minute or so, right? You have a constant state of stress. That's chronic stress. So you're getting this like system to constantly produce cortisol. And one of the things that cortisol does is, obviously, it starts to mobilize your energy in certain ways, starts to try to like, increase your blood sugar levels and all these different things like that. So cortisol phase comes, or it's a term, right? It's not necessarily like a medical term, but it's more of like an overstress phase that people experience when they have just exhausted the system, right? Like they're constantly in this like fight or flight response. Like, who typically experience like cortisol phase? Those people who have like, hyper processed diets, high sugar intake, they're hyper stressed all the time. They're like, this like negative people. They get upset about things very easily. There are people who have like a poor gut health as well, because of a lot of times like their eating habits. Sometimes they over exercise, sometimes they just don't do anything. So it's like all the complete opposites of where we would like to be. And a lot of times that manifests in the way people look. Um, it's interesting because I'm doing this like interesting diet experiment where I am going from whole foods to a full carnivore diet. And so far in like the whole foods phase of this, people have told me my face look different. And yeah, I lost some weight, but more than losing weight, I think it's just like there's just something that changed in my face because of it. And I think it's related to possibly that, right? Like kind of reducing my cortisol standing face in a way. But yeah, it's not a medical term, but it's more of the way somebody looks whenever like they're just going through the stage of their life where like they're just have poor eating habits, poor exercise habits, and they're just constantly stressed, and usually that also relates to poor sleep as well. So it's just like this tired like phase that just looks down, and like, I don't know how to explain it, but I think you probably, when people see somebody that they're not really taking good care of themselves, that's probably what that is.
Hey friends, it's Jaye Anne here. If you have been feeling really stressed out about the world lately, you are not alone. There's been enough crazy and fear flying around the internet that even I've been knocked off my rocker sometimes. But it's times like these that I'm really grateful for the tools I have to regulate my nervous system. I developed these tools for myself when I was going through the thick of it. My babies were young and I had a ton of repressed anger. And these tools helped me through other stressful times, including negotiating my own divorce, having difficult money conversations, and of course, the whole COVID experience. And I've put all these tools in a method I call the Authentic Self-Care Method. This is different than other self-care programs because it is a framework for you to find your special sauce when it comes to self-care. And let me tell you a secret. Step 1 is not take a bath, get a haircut, or go to the gym. Step 1 is regulate your nervous system. And that's exactly what we do inside the 3-in-1 membership. This powerful program includes focused journals and meditations you can do in just a few minutes, like the fight or flight session, the hippocampus session, which rewrites your ability to see new possibilities, and the vagus nerve session, which helps you regulate your whole body in a crisis. Using these tools, members have reported feeling more empowered, more expansive, and many experience relief from actual physical pain, all for less than $2 a day. So join the 3-in-1 membership now so you can learn these tools today. The world is not going to become less crazy. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it. The 3-in-1 membership will help you do that, so click the link in the show notes to enroll today.
So if someone comes to you and they have this type of life, right? Like, it's not just about how you look, but like you said, it manifests in how you look. And they have this type of life where they're very stressed out. They can't get a hold of their food. They're feeling overly worked, appreciated, tired all the time, exhausted, just cannot function, but it's just keep on going because they don't know what else to do. How do you work with that person? Where do you start?
Yeah. At some point in my career, I would start them with a lot of things, and that made the process worse, right? Because then it just exacerbated the stress. So now I focus on what we like to call the one thing, right? So now what I try to aim towards is trying to identify what's the biggest domino that will like knock the other ones out first. I have a client who currently is overweight, and she's struggling with energy. Now, granted, she's like in one of those weight loss medications, and she's overwhelmed because she started a business with her husband. She has 2 kids. Like, for me to tell her to do and track macros and look at calories and all these different things that a lot of times some people need to kind of go through, it's making things worse. So for me, what I ask her is like, what do you think is the biggest thing that would move the needle for you right now? She's like, I just need to sleep better. Okay. And that's what we're going to start with. And I think that would be a great opportunity to do that. So, and don't get me wrong, sometimes like the all or nothing approaches sometimes work for certain people, but it really depends on their personality. um if you give a Virgo like this, like me, like this, like fully sophisticated plan, sometimes they need a whole lot to execute all at once because they want the quicker, like, benefit and the net benefit on all this, and they're pretty good at executing all those things at once, no matter whatever is going on in their lives, right? So but for other people, it's usually just one thing. So I try to identify what that domino is, and sometimes like people don't even know what it is because they have so many blind spots. So I usually try to focus on something within this, like, 4-pillar place, which is either something in their nutrition, something in their sleep, or their, I guess, like their lifestyle, right? So their sleep, their stress, something in their exercise routines, or something in the way that they think, which are going to be something that is like very powerful in the process. So I try to figure out exactly what it is on that. And sometimes we sort of pick a couple of areas. So an example of nutrition that I think most people sometimes struggle with is like, are they getting enough protein? Are they drinking enough water? Are they eating enough food? Right. So those are like are they getting enough fiber to be able to help them feel better and keep them satiety and keep them full? Those are the big four ones in nutrition that I try to aim towards to. In their lifestyle, I try to ask them, or the biggest culprits on that is, are they getting enough sleep? And are they managing their stress adequately? And do they have, for the most part, good or poor habits in general, right? So what is an example of a good habit? Well, they wake up with enough like plenty of time to be able to connect with themselves. What is a bad habit? Waking up rushed and ready to go. Like that's not the best way to do it, because this is the time your cortisol is the highest, and you need to make sure that you're, finding a good opportunity to try to like chill. So I try to like aim towards that. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting good quality of sleep? And when life gets busy and stressed, how do you manage it? Do you feel like you have it always on, or sometimes you actually find opportunities to turn things off? Right? Do you get enough like exposure to the sun? Do you get enough like time in nature? These things are important. And we get into movement, which is the biggest issues with people is either they don't move enough, um, or they move too much, which means that they over exercise. And there's like two camps, right? Like the obsessive over exercisers, like weekend warriors. I need to do as much as I can, like beat a horse to death in their training. And there's those who sort of exercise, but they're just like so sedentary. They barely move like, throughout the day, and they don't even get outside. Mindset wise is a little bit more complex, but most people typically experience this all or nothing syndrome, which is they even have to do and fix all those things that I just mentioned all at once, or they don't do anything, right? And I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of times happens. So that's one big issue that many people experience. And the second is a lack of self-compassion. It's like this self-criticism that is just so overpowering. And is a result of the society that we live in today through comparison, because we live in social media. So we're always looking at people around us and trying to measure up to them. Are we better or worse than them? Why can't I be like them? And that creates stress, and that creates a lot of issues within us. Or it's because of the fact that we're just simply being hard on ourselves, right? We want to be perfect. We want to do all the right things. We want to show the highlight reels on social media and that kind of stuff. And that stuff, it's really exhausting and really, really difficult sometimes too. So there's a lot of mindset stuff that really happens. Or people's relationship with food, right? Which is so distorted and broken. If emotionally, when you are really emotionally charged, your way to cope with that is through eating. I will tell people, and always a podcast I've been on, it's understandably that happens, but it's not normal, right? Like if that's your way to cope with it, like people either cope with stress by numbing things down, and sometimes they numb it through alcohol, through sex, cigarettes or smoking, through anger, or food is a big one too. That really a lot of times happens because it just kind of calms you down into certain ways. There's so many different components into that. So for me to coach somebody adequately, I need to identify out of all those things, that kind of laundry list of things that I just mentioned, what out of those things is the most important right now that we need to fix. And we start to work on that. We are working our way backwards on there. And I like to kind of show people that when they work on we call them keystone habits, other parts of their lives naturally get better. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say somebody that doesn't move starts to walk like 20 minutes every day. They have more energy. So maybe they'll come home. But first of all, to be able to fit the 20 minutes in a day, they'll wake up a little bit earlier. So now they're not starting their day rush, and they feel a little bit better. Their energy goes up, and they also come home from their 20-minute walk, and they're like, I don't want to eat like crap. I want to have a good breakfast. So now maybe they're getting the extra protein. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we focus on one thing, but a lot of times that one thing gets them to focus on like 3 or 4 others, but not by default. And this is the things you need to check off, but rather just more as a side effect. And that's how usually the best weight loss, when people want to lose weight, that's the best way it happens. But you're not pursuing it. You're just simply letting it happen as a side effect.
Absolutely. I love this. I love this. One focused habit and the other one's just kind of fall in line by accident. And then it really doesn't feel like you're trying so hard. It just feels like you're just doing one thing. And whoops, I lost 30 pounds. just focusing on one thing, and then the accountability with you helps, I'm sure, where they can be honest about the rest of the thing that's going on in their lives. This is so good. This is so
Yeah.
good. Um, what is something that you wish that everybody knew about health, nutrition, or anything that we talked about today?
That's a good question. I think the most important part of it that I think I've learned in my years as a dietitian is that um, there's always going to be blind spots that you can't see. Um, and which means that, you could think you can have it all figured out. But the reality is there's a lot of things that you're not seeing. And unless you have somebody else pointing it out to you and tell you how to fix it, you're always going to struggle. Right? And I think this is what gets people to get to 80% of where they want to get to, because the other 20 to 10% of where they need to get to, it's something that they just don't know exactly where it is. So this is why for me, mentorship and accountability and guidance from others has become such a big paramount place, because 10 years ago, I was the type of guy that was just like DIY everything. I can do it myself, right? I can figure this out on my own. Like I can YouTube my way through this, or I can podcast my way through this, like, this struggle and what it is. And until I realized, when I started to like work with other people, to be mentored by others, to be coached by others, that I understood the value of connection with our community to help us figure it out exactly what's wrong. And I struggle with this still, because I'm a very isolated guy. Like, I have my family, but it's really difficult for me to kind of get out of my own little cave, which, literally is, as we speak, I'm sitting in right now. But I believe that it's the way to the best like times. And speaking about it, makes me realize, like, I don't have a whole lot of like mentorship right now. And when I don't, is when I feel like the most lost and the most fearful, and the most like, life is harder when I'm doing it that way. So if there's one thing I feel like I wish people understood about their health, is you don't have to figure it out on your own. And sometimes doing so, it's the very long way to take. And some people don't get to the destination that they want to get to, no matter how much they try. Sometimes they think they do, but I tell people, like, when somebody is like in this cycle of like accomplishing something and getting back into it, that's not accomplishing anything. You're not fixing the problem, right? And this is, I think people have led to believe that that's just a normal thing to do. Lose the 20 pounds and gain the 20 pounds, lose the 20 pounds, and then you spend like 20 years of their lives going through that cycle. That's not normal. That's not the way it's supposed to be, right? And I think people are led to believe that that's okay. So people need to know that it's
Yeah,
not, but there's ways to fix that, and there's tools to use to be able to make it happen.
absolutely. That was so important. That was so important. I think that forgetting thinking that we have to do it all ourselves, or that we should, and that's the right way, is really hard to unlearn. Um, but it's an important one to unlearn. Important. So
Yeah.
good. So good. Um, well, I think that's everything I wanted to talk to you about today. But Andre, where can people find you if they're looking you up? What is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so the easiest is actually my Instagram account. So you can just type my first and last name, Andres Ayesta, and you're gonna be able to find me. That's where I'm like most active. In fact, if you start following me, I'm gonna send you a message and tell you hello. Like literally, I'm gonna send you a video and say like, "Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for following me. I appreciate the support." So I'm very personal in there. I manage my own account. And then I have a TikTok account. I also have a YouTube channel, which is a great place to be if you want just like more of my longer stuff. And then my website is planusnutrition.com. That's a place where you can go, and if you want to find out exactly how to, although you can do this on social media platforms as well, but you can find out exactly how to work with me And we have what we call our blueprint method, which is basically like everything we talked about that we teach our clients. It's all packaged into this like experience with people where I walk them through that for 4 months of just completely transforming everything in their lives. Yeah, if that's something that you feel like you're in need of and you want the support and the guidance of somebody unconventional like me when it comes on to that's a place to go and check out as well.
So great. Everybody follow Andres on Instagram and get your free video, personalized
Yeah,
videos.
for
I love
sure.
it.
I'll send you one for sure.
What's one thing you want to leave everybody with before we sign off today?
I think the biggest one I would say that I've been sharing often is consistency always beats perfection. It's
Oh,
something I try to kind of tell myself every day. So just continue to show up, continue to learn, and continue to fail. And it's all part of the process. And just let things fall the way that they're supposed to. I think those are the main things that I feel like I personally have learned, and that I want people to also take for themselves as well.
so great. Consistency beats perfection. I love it. Thank you so much, Andre. And everyone, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.